Fed left rates unchanged in June, but communicated a dovish message, which teased up a rate cut as early as its next meeting in July. Now, the committee dropped the word patient in their statement, downgraded the characterization of economic activity from solid to moderate, and also revealed a dot plot which showed that 8 FOMC participants expect to cut rates this year. Our base case is that the Fed will cut rates in the second half of this year, although the timing and magnitude of the first cut will depend on US-Chinese trade tensions and how the global economic outlook continues to evolve. Together with the dovish ECB pivot in June, who indicated that more rate cuts and asset purchases will be forthcoming if inflation doesn't progress towards a symmetric 2% target, we see an explicit bias towards accommodative action from both major central banks. Now, central bank accommodation will be kicking in against a backdrop of slow but decent enough growth, and history tells us this scenario tends to be supportive of risk assets over the near to medium term if recessionary pressures do not emerge, which is our baseline scenario. Now, this is a positive setup for dollar-sensitive EM assets as well as high-yield bonds, which will benefit from lower rates, a more supportive environment for growth, and also provide sought-after carry in a reach-for-yield environment. Within high-yield bonds, we prefer Asian high-yield, particularly Chinese property developers, which offer better value than their Latin American and CMEN counterparts. In our view, Chinese property developers represent relatively appealing risk-reward at this juncture, which is underpinned by sustainable domestic demand, stable credit fundamentals, and manageable liquidity.
We're pondering policy possibilities as concern grows over the global cycle. The most immediate policy response is coming from central banks. In the US, the Fed is giving a clear signal that it's prepared to lower rates, probably with a 0.5% cut in the third quarter. This will help to counter the fading impact of tax cuts. In Europe and Japan, there's talk of renewed easing, but realistically, there's not much more that they can do. With such low bond yields, negative in many cases, it makes more sense to borrow money and use fiscal policy to support growth if needed. However, politically this seems difficult, so governments are delegating responsibility to central banks. Of course, if trade friction is the main cause of uncertainty, then the best solution would be to come to a durable deal. But that is still uncertain. More positively, note that most of the pain is in trade and manufacturing. The service sector, which is a far larger part of developed economies, is still fairly solid. In Europe, PMI for the service sector just hit a 7-month high. In the US, this is shown through solid data on labour demand, consumer confidence, retail sales and housing. And this should offer some reassurance on the global growth outlook, especially if supported by some moderate policy easing.